Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining our webinar this morning. We have a little audio glitch here. Hold on just one second. All right, I think we're good. Just testing real quick here. All right, let me try again. Thank you all for joining our webinar this morning, How McGraw-Hill Education Uses Sumo Logic to Troubleshoot Web Applications on AWS. Our agenda today, we'll do some welcome and introductions, and then the bulk of the presentation about how McGraw-Hill Education uses Sumo Logic. And last but not least, Amazon Web Services will talk for a few minutes. Before we get into that, some housekeeping things. Attendees will be muted throughout the webinar. If you have any questions at any time, feel free to type them into the chat window. We'll be able to see them here, and we'll collect them all to handle at the end of the presentation. We are recording this webinar, and it will be sent out to all participants. And at the very end, you'll be prompted to answer a single survey question. We really appreciate you participating in the survey. So let me get into the welcome and introductions. Today's speakers, Shane Shelton, the Senior Director of Application Performance and Development Operations at McGraw-Hill Education. We'll talk about how he uses Sumo Logic at McGraw-Hill Education. My name is Michael Butt. I'm a Senior Product Marketing Manager here at Sumo Logic. I'll mostly be emceeing and helping to keep things flowing along. And we have Matt Tavis, Principal Solutions Architect from AWS, who will speak after Shane. And with that, let's get right into it. I'll pass it off to Shane and how McGraw-Hill Education uses Sumo Logic.
All right, thanks for that. Thanks everybody for joining the webinar today. I'm Shane Shelton. I'm the Senior Director of Application Performance and DevOps at McGraw-Hill Education. I wanted to start today by just giving a brief overview of McGraw-Hill and what we do. We were recently, about 2 years ago, divested from McGraw-Hill companies. Now McGraw-Hill Education is a standalone entity. When we were divested from McGraw-Hill companies, we made the decision to transform from a traditional publishing company, as most of you probably have bought or read one of our books, into a learning science company, and learning science being backed via digital software. So that second point, we're investing heavily in digital software, whether it's us deploying global platforms for learning or just standalone products for our customers. We currently have a digital product. The bulk of it now is in Amazon Web Services, or I'll call it AWS going forward. We do have some company data centers, which I'll talk a little bit about on a couple slides from now, where we also host some of our digital product. In regards to what we use in Amazon, we have deployed platforms globally across Amazon to date. We don't use all their services. We almost use all of their services. There's a handful that we don't use. We're actually going to close that gap, and actually after this fall, after we have a new product launch, we will actually be using 100% of all services that Amazon provides. So with that said, I'm going to get into some of my favorite features of Sumo Logic, and then how we use them today at MHE to boost productivity. So troubleshooting and real-time alerting. I'm not sure how many of you use log aggregation tools currently, but whenever we were figuring out that we actually needed one of these because of the size of our environment, we looked at a lot of different providers, both on-premise and SaaS. At the time when we made the decision, it made more sense for where we were going, already leveraging Amazon as our infrastructure as a service, to go ahead and not try to deploy our own log aggregation service on top of Amazon. So we decided to go with the SaaS model, and then we ended up choosing Sumo Logic. It came down to 3 vendors for us. We ended up picking Sumo Logic because they had the most robust feature set at the time. I haven't looked at the other two we didn't pick since then, so I'm not sure where they're at. But Sumo Logic was by far and away the most superior product, in my opinion, at the time we chose it, as well as the ease of use of the console. And we'll get into some of the console stuff here in a little bit on some later slides. So going into what we use here, I didn't put it on this slide, but I did want to point out the ease of deployment. We use Puppet internally for infrastructure automation. The Sumo Logic, it's an agent that sits on your server, and you essentially just tell it what logs to point to. And then you basically slice up the information via a thing called source category, which I'll get into more detail on that on the next slide. So what we do is, as soon as a server launches inside of Amazon via CloudFormation or however we're launching it, the server will then come up. Puppet will see the server is new. It'll assign the modules to it, including the Sumo Logic agent module. The module is smart enough to read the server name. It'll then parse the server name and then assign it a source category. The source category, again, is how we partition the information inside of Sumo Logic. It'll then make an API call to Sumo Logic's public API over encryption. It will register as a collector inside of Sumo Logic, and then it'll immediately start sending data. So there's no user intervention here. This is 100% automated as soon as the server comes online. This happens in a matter of minutes. Just kind of hitting on how long it took us to do this from the inception. I mean, it took us about 2 weeks to get the modules puppetized before we could actually start using the actual Sumo Logic product from when we purchased it. Getting into the troubleshooting, as many of you know, if you've ever worked in a large environment, whenever you're trying to find something log-wise, whether or not you're having like a production outage or you're just having a weird performance problem, logging in to thousands of servers and then parsing through log files, it's not productive at all. It's a complete and total waste of time. So what Sumo Logic gives you the benefit of doing is you're essentially shipping off millions and millions and millions of rows of logs. You can use Sumo Logic's proprietary query language to query your logs to be able to find the information you need in a matter of seconds usually, as opposed to having to log into a Linux box. You didn't find what you needed, log into another one, and so on and so on. Another added benefit of this is I'm sure a lot of people on this call, especially if you've been in operations, have struggled with that conversation with development, saying they absolutely have to have access to production. That's always a nice battle to have with your dev teams. So this kind of gets rid of one of those about them needing to view logs in production, thus needing access to servers. Because of Sumo Logic's roles-based access controls, we can give development, QA, our performance teams, DevOps, Ops teams, all access, or security teams, all access into Sumo Logic, and we can do it at a very granular level. So I had mentioned this, the way that we partition information via source category earlier. You can get it as granular down to the way that we partition is by product, by environment, by tier. So if I wanted to give a single individual just access to our QA web logs for our Connect product, for instance, then I would be able to get that granular level to where they could only see Apache logs for that environment, for that product. So it's very helpful. Another thing that we used right out of the gate, which Sumo was super helpful with, before we went down the Amazon path and started moving all of our products into Amazon, we had a lot of products in a lot of different data centers globally dispersed. We did run into an issue where we were, when we started doing more and more product integration across the different development teams inside of McGraw-Hill. And one particular instance, we had a team in Tel Aviv, Israel, that was working with one of our teams out of New York City. The Tel Aviv, Israel product was hosted out of a data center in California, and then the New York City team was hosted out of US East and Amazon. So we were having some integration problems. Because Sumo Logic and we were already sending all the logs from both teams or from both data centers into Sumo, we quickly went in, just configured a role, gave the necessary people access to the new role, which essentially gave them access to both systems' log files. So as we were transferring data back and forth, they could see the logs in real time to be able to fix the issues. very quickly. We still use this feature today for systems that aren't on our in our centralized VPCs. So this is a very helpful feature if you are highly decentralized, like MHE is with all of your development teams. And then the last thing that's very beneficial is the numerous alerts. I mean, obviously nobody wants to sit around reading log files all day, and I'll get into the alerts here on this next slide here in a second. But basically, the alerting mechanism for Sumo Logic allows you to trigger based on regex or just strings that you see in log files that are important to you. So you don't have to sit around waiting and reading logs, waiting for something to happen. If you know that a certain error message means something imminent's about to happen in production, then you can alert on that, and then you can be more proactive instead of reactive to things in your environment. So with that said, this is one of the alerting examples, a very small excerpt out of some of our operational stuff. These are Java applications running WebLogic up top, and this is just a kind of a snippet out of how it lists them inside the console. What I really want to focus on here is the actual drill down into WebLogic DB connection alert issue. What this means is the WebLogic or Java application can no longer talk to the database. Obviously, that's a really big problem for a web app. It needs to talk to the database to stay up. It's very simple to set these up. So you basically just give it a name. We talked about the source category a little bit earlier, and you see that in the search box. This particular one, this alerts on any product, thus the wild card of the star here, in production for anything running WebLogic. So if a string value comes through with network adapter could not establish the connection on any WebLogic server running in prod, regardless of product, the run frequency is set to real time, so it will alert us in real time. And a lot of people, including myself, whenever we were doing our due diligence on Sumo Logic as a product, I'm like, okay, yeah, great, real time. What does that really mean? Does that mean that I'll see the logs in 30 minutes, an hour? It truly is real time. So the way the agent works is as soon as a line is written into whatever log file you're written, it immediately transfers it over HTTPS into the Sumo Logic collection service. The collection service then does its magic behind the scenes, so you can actually get meaningful data out of the Sumo Logic console, and then it would alert. So the way that this would work is this string would go into a WebLogic server. Less than a second later, it would be at Sumo Logic. They would run what they need to run. So literally in a matter of seconds, because this is set to real time, as soon as this happens on the server, our operations team is immediately being notified that they need to look into this because that particular server or servers just lost database connectivity. Again, super simple to set these up. It's literally a matter of seconds. You just need to know what you're looking for, and then obviously have the source category correct. But we have hundreds of these that we watch on a daily basis, so we can be more proactive for our customers in fixing issues before they occur. This is an example of a dashboard. There's several dashboards that Sumo Logic gives you out of the box, and this particular one is one of their out-of-the-box ones. You can also create custom dashboards. That query I just showed you on the alert box on the last slide is basically each one of these sections of this dashboard are powered by a query in the background. So this particular dashboard, this is actually live data from our system for CloudTrail. If you're not familiar with what CloudTrail is, it's an Amazon service. It's an audit service inside of Amazon. Essentially what it does is it watches and logs all the API calls from your accounts into an S3 bucket. And what we do with that is we transfer the S3 bucket audit logs into Sumo Logic so we can query them, alert on them, create cool dashboards like this. A lot of it's used for our security purposes, or our security team wants to see a lot of this stuff. The CAN dashboards are available immediately whenever you log in there. They have like Apache, Linux, Windows. I just want to stress here that the ease of making a custom dashboard, as long as you know the queries and the information that you're after, creating these is literally a matter of minutes. We use these from an operational perspective. Can also use them for executive reporting, things of that nature. But very helpful if you want to get a global view of, I'm not sure which account this is for us, but of an account that has a lot of users, a lot of servers, and a lot of activity in it. The next feature that I wanted to discuss, this one I absolutely love, is the Sumo Logic log reduce feature. Kind of how I'd mentioned earlier is if you are dealing with environments that have thousands of servers, and let's say that you have like a web farm that has like 5,000 nodes or something like that, it's not helpful to go in and then, like, even if you were doing log aggregation, to pull logs from those 5,000 boxes and then look at all those pages of logs. You're still finding it. You're still looking for a needle in a haystack. Especially if you're in an outage situation and you have SLAs to abide by and you need to get things done very quickly. So essentially what log reduce does, it allows you to do queries on hundreds and thousands of boxes, and then it will aggregate that into patterns, and then you can summarize it however you want. I believe the default is count, which I'll show an example of this on the next page. This was really helpful, and I like giving real-world examples here as opposed to just making stuff up. Everybody, I'm sure on this call, if you do any administration or operations work, very familiar with the bash vulnerability that came out a while back. Extremely bad vulnerability inside of Linux, affected many systems. What we were able to do, because we were shipping the correct logs via our Linux systems into Sumo, is that Sumo Logic support actually helped us write a query to where we could query all of our systems across the board where we were feeding Sumo Logic data from. And then we were able to query those and then filter those out via log reduce and then match the strings of showing what servers were being attacked actively via the bash vulnerability before we even got the fix from Red Hat. So, I mean, we're literally talking thousands of boxes, and we're able to query that information and see in almost real time the servers actively being or trying to actively be broken into by people, and their IP addresses so we could block them before we could patch it. So that was extremely helpful in a very, very bad situation. To give an example of this, this particular example, it comes from one of our application tiers running a Java app. And if you've ever administered or troubleshot a Java app, you know Java exceptions are very common. Some are way worse than others. This particular example is pulling, I believe, 24 hours of data across an entire application tier for one of our applications, just Java exceptions. And I use this example because I wanted to show the power of log reduce. So when I run this example, I get back 11,229 pages of data. Now, even if you have an army of sysadmins tackling this, this is going to take you days to parse through this if you're looking for something. Very specific. So all you do in Sumo Logic is you hit the log reduce button, which is up in that top center. When log reduce comes back with the results, it's down to 15 pages. It's sorted by pattern, so if you already know what you're looking for, you can drill down into that easily. And then it also shows you a count of how many times that occurred. So what I do there is I can filter out the stuff that it's known exceptions or like framework security issues like that third one down, et cetera, and then I can find specifically what I was looking for. Then you can then drill down into that granularly. It'll show you the server it's coming from, and then you have the relevant information you need to make whatever decision to get a server back online, solve a performance issue, or whatever you're trying to do from your end. So those are a couple of features that I personally like, that I use on a day-to-day basis with this product. It does many more things. I encourage you to explore it. It's a great product. We love it at McGraw-Hill, not just from a DevOps perspective, but from our ops teams, QA, Dev. All of our teams love using this product. It's helped boost our productivity and our product uptime a great deal since we implemented it about 2 years ago. So with that said, I'm actually going to hand this over to Matt with AWS, and he's going to talk a little bit about Amazon Web Services.
Thanks, Shane. I'm going to go ahead and show my screen here. Hopefully this will work. That was a fantastic overview. Really appreciate that. That's great to see that you're getting so much power from a great partner like Sumo Logic and really able to innovate. I think there's a couple things that are really important to. Whoops, sorry. Let me go back. Messed up the slideshow. There we go. A couple things that are really important to think about when you think about leveraging AWS, and I think you're highlighting a really key lesson that I've learned over my 9.5 years with Amazon and many years working as a solutions architect with partners and customers, is that the pace of innovation and the expectations in the industry, both for you, Shane, for McGraw-Hill, and customers, is really quickening. I mean, the pace of innovation is going much, much faster. The expectations of how to deliver products, how quickly you can evolve them, how quickly development teams can launch new capabilities and features into the platform is just, the expectations are becoming astronomical in terms of speed and pace. And I think that's obviously the recognition that we had in the early days and why we created the capabilities around AWS and the flexibility and the power of the platform. But it's actually interesting, and I think this Sumo Logic partnership and this product makes a great case for it's not just for consumers of AWS, but also the partners that are leveraging that platform. So the pace of innovation, not only for the expectations for customers, but even for people delivering services on top of AWS is actually quickening as well. And so, you know, I've had the pleasure to work with Sumo you know, for a while now, and really recognize the pace at which they've evolved that product and improve it. And some of the features you talk about in terms of, you know, log reduce and the capability to quickly analyze large-scale data, these are the kinds of capabilities that come through this, the innovation possible on a flexible platform. So really, you know, it is about not just leveraging the flexibility and power of AWS, but even the partners on top that are building on that innovation capability as well, such as Sumo. I think that sort of drills down to my other message when I look at, you know, what's really happened and how the platform AWS has changed over the years. Obviously, we've done a ton of innovation and evolution around, you know, improvements to our platform. But on top of that, we've really seen a lot of partners come along to really expand on the offering and capability. And that's where I think it's really important to recognize the AWS platform is a place to go build and develop new applications and evolve existing architectures. But on top of that, it's a place for you to even discover and find this rich ecosystem of partners that actually build and help enable customers to move more quickly. So it really shouldn't be a lonely experience, as I like to think about it. It's really your example, Shane, of leveraging Sumo has obviously accelerated your pace of innovation, but it's also been able to leverage that ecosystem that's made that innovation for you and that evolution possible and quick. So looking at the AWS partner network, and as a picture here, the ability to find it, really it's about, for AWS, it's about providing this flexible platform that allows you as a customer or partner to discover technologies that complement your solution and actually build on what you're trying to evolve. And Sumo is obviously a great partner in that network. So really, you know, thinking about how you're moving forward, how you're evolving, it's not that you have to solve every individual problem yourself in an architecture on top of AWS. Rather, it's finding the combinations of partners and tools that exist out there today, of the thousands of ISV and SI partners we have, and the many marketplace offerings that exist. Finding that right combination of toolkits that will allow you to focus on what's most important for your business. You know, in case of McGraw-Hill, evolving your platform, but then also, you know, most appropriate to leverage existing investments in software and existing capabilities and existing tools that have been moved over to the platform, and be able to accelerate that innovation even faster by leveraging the partnership model. And so really taking advantage of that flexibility and innovation, I think is highlighted here in this webinar, but then on top of that, recognizing the many thousands of partners that bring to bear great solutions. And Sumo is just a fantastic example of how quickly customers can innovate using not just their own the AWS technology, but also the evolution that's occurred in the Sumo Logic offering as well over time. And with that, actually, not a lot to say there. Obviously, I'm not going to dive deep on the AWS platform. I think that's kind of a given. I think a lot of folks know about it. But yeah, I'll turn it over to Michael for some closing comments, and then actually. Love to move on to, I think there's some Q&A coming in as well for both myself and Shane on the communication. So turn it over to you, Michael.
All right, Shane and Matt, thank you so very much for that. I wanted to invite all of our attendees to sign up and try our free 30-day trial at sumologic.com. Onboarding is extremely easy. We have direct connections to AWS services, so you can pull in data immediately, or from your applications and infrastructure as well. And with that, let's get into the questions and answers. Let's see, our first, hold on one second here. I got to bring up the questions. Our first question here is going to be for Shane. Shane, the question is, how do you make sure that the Sumo collector agents are talking to the Sumo Cloud service all the time?
Yeah, so this part's actually pretty easy. Since it's an agent that runs on the box, regardless if it's Windows or Linux, one, we monitor to make sure the service is up. So if the service goes down, like clearly it's not sending logs. Sumo Logic Agent actually has a neat feature too, where it does log rotate for you. So typically you would have to write some custom stuff in Linux to tell the logs to turn over at a certain size. What we do is we rotate our logs via the Sumo agent, and so if the logs are going over if the logs folder goes over a size that is like, so let's say for instance our logs directory on a Linux box is expected to be 500 megabytes, and then we get an alert that it's at 5 gigabytes. Then that's how we specifically, we don't do it on the Sumo side, we do it on the ops side with our own monitoring tools just to make sure the agent is up, and then viewing the disk space that particular directory is taken. We put all of our logs go into the same directory for our applications, so we can do just a global view of that logs directory on the servers. Hopefully that answers your question.
All right, thank you, Shane. And let's go on to our second question, which I will cover. And the question was that Shane mentioned that he created alerts about known alerts, but the question is, was he able to teach Sumo Logic to capture errors that are not known? And there are two ways that's handled in Sumo Logic. The first is from log file data, where we saw the log reduce feature that could be used to identify patterns in the data. And so from those patterns, signatures can be created, and then we can look for changes in those signatures. And we call that our anomaly detection feature. So that's one way to use the product to learn what is a normal behavior and then look for abnormal. The second way is based on metric data that can come out of log files as well. And that is our feature called outlier. And basically the way the outlier works is that it learns what is normal over a period of time and dynamically creates a baseline for that metric. And when that metric goes out of bounds, then alert can be created off of that out of bounds condition. So those are two different ways that Sumo Logic can be used to and learn what is normal for your system and help you to understand the behavior and behavioral abnormalities and anomalies. All right, let's see if we have any more questions here. All right, we have one more question for Shane here, which is, can you provide more examples on how you use Sumo Logic for security monitoring?
Yeah, I can. Sumo Logic's not the only tool we use we use a bevy of intrusion detection tools across our platforms. One of the main things we use Sumo Logic for, though, is the way that we structure our security changes in AWS today is my team is not allowed to build or make changes to security-related items inside of Amazon without it being reviewed by our security operations team first. So the way that process works is that we come up with a change. Obviously, if it's production, we need to go to our change board and get it approved. But essentially what Sumo Logic is doing is it's keeping us honest. So I had mentioned CloudTrail earlier in that presentation. CloudTrail will send the what actually physically changed and by who did it and what did they do. Those alerts go to our security team based on, like, if you're changing a security group, for instance, if you're changing an IAM role or policy. Essentially, it keeps us honest that the changes that we're making that are getting approved by security are the ones that we're making. And because, like I said, the alerting can be set up in real time as soon as the change goes in. Security will already know that the change is happening. They'll just get an alert showing what we did, and just to basically keep us honest that we actually did the change that we meant we were changing. Now, mind you, if it can also do other things, like if somebody's like beating down the door of your your AWS console login, like, for instance, they get hold of one of your admin usernames, and you keep continuously trying to log in to the console, and you don't have a lockout policy for whatever reason. It can alert on things like that. Amazon can do this too. We personally choose to use Sumo Logic for it, just so all the data's in a centralized place.
All right, thank you, Shane. We have yet another one for you. Normally, how much time, Shane, does it take you to get the logs into Sumo Logic and into the console after setting up an agent or enabling pulling logs from a service such as Elastic Load Balancers?
So I'll take that in two parts. So if it's just an EC2 instance, we do a lot of auto-scaling at MHE. So per our auto-scaling, or our own internal ones, auto-scaling happens in a matter of minutes. The server needs to be up based on the demand of the product, and it needs to be up and running in a matter of minutes. As part of that provisioning process, when auto-scaling kicks off, I'd mentioned Puppet will go in and say, okay, I see that you're a X server running on Y application. You need the Sumo Logic agent. It'll deploy it right there. So before the server can even start, even gets inserted into an ELB and starts servicing customer traffic, it's already sending logs into the Sumo Logic system. In regards to ELBs, there is a little bit of caveat with the transfer from S3 into Matt or Mike, you can talk a little bit more about this. I forget the reason why. There is about a 15-minute delay in getting data out of S3 and then putting it in Sumo Logic. I forget the actual reason for that. But if you were doing an ELB log, if you ask that question, then I'm sure you're setting up ELB logging. You'll log it to an S3 bucket, and then you'll give Sumo Logic service access into that S3 bucket so it can pull the logs. And I think that by default, the fastest it'll do it is 15 minutes. But Mike or Matt, if you guys know the exact reason behind that, feel free to speak up.
Yeah, I do not. Matt, do you have any comments that you can make on that delay going through the S3 buckets?
Yeah, so obviously the ELB log rotation to S3 is, it's not a real-time feed of information into a location. It's going to be on a regular sort of, if you will, sort of cron, as an example. It's not cron, but sort of a rotational model where files reach a certain size or amount of time has passed, and then it gets passed to S3. And then of course on the Sumo Logic side, it's obviously detecting the new files there and then pulling it in. So it's it's a combination of things. It's not, because the ELB logs to S3 is not a real-time feed or stream, if you will. It's not going to show up in the same time frame as you might if you're pumping data directly via an agent into a service directly, which is what's happening in the EC2 side of things. So it's a different data flow model. So it's going to be, part of it is the rotation of the logs off of the ELB, and then the pushing them over to S3, which is not a stream. And then the other side is going to be picking up, processing that log file, and then pulling it into Sumo Logic, which is why there's more of a delay in that space.
All right, thanks, Matt. Next question. With the recent announcement of VPC flow logs, which is virtual private cloud flow logs, getting some network visibility into virtual private clouds, and a limitation of this information being sent to CloudWatch logs, will Sumo Logic be looking for a method of ingesting this information? The answer is yes, absolutely. We've actually been working with AWS pre-released for VPC flow logs, and we have an application that's in the works, and we have a blog post on it. So check out our blog. George Churchow wrote a blog outlining the upcoming VPC flow log app that you will see very, very soon. All right, let me see if we have any other questions here. All right, next question is, can we get errors from our databases using Sumo Logic? The answer, of course, is yes. Databases often provide pretty good set of data that you can collect and pull directly into Sumo Logic. And again, you can real-time alert on it. You can use it for search historical, and again, even identify patterns and data as well. So databases clearly, and a lot of infrastructure components generally, up through the application layer and even into end-user monitoring. That data can be pulled into Sumo Logic for monitoring purposes, health and status, for alerting, for troubleshooting, and for historical auditing and searching as well. All right, next question is for Shane. With Sumo Logic, can you aggregate logs across auto-scaled instances using their AWS tags?
Yeah, so Sumo Logic is not going to be aware of a tag that you put on an EC2 instance. There's no way that I know of where you could take the tags in because it's an agent running on the physical Linux VM. The only time that Sumo Logic is tag aware is you can see if you're ingesting CloudTrail logs, you can see the tagging happening via create tag inside of the CloudTrail event. That's the only time it would be able to know that there was even a tag assigned to an instance. If you're asking about, it seems like you're asking about aggregating a group of servers together. You wouldn't do that based on tag. If you recall on that second slide I showed, you would actually come up with a logical grouping inside of your whatever makes sense for your company. With the source category is how we did it, and then we logically group. If a server, regardless if it's an auto-scale group or not an auto-scale group, it's going to be part of the same tier, and it's going to be part of the same product, and it's going to be in the same environment. So again, that's just how we logically grouped our servers together. So if an auto-scale instance was to come up, and let's say that it was a web application or it was a web server running in production for our Connect application, when it comes up, it's going to have that name associated with it. And then, like I said, Puppet will go ahead and configure it for the proper source category. And then if I wanted to query that data inside of Sumo Logic, it'll automatically be added to that source category so I can get the data out of that system in the matter of time that it actually takes it to stand up, which is a matter of minutes.
All right, next question. Is there a help document to show how to monitor database, specifically MySQL errors, using Sumo Logic? And the answer here is twofold. First, we have an app for MySQL, which will automatically take the data and put it into dashboard form, so you can easily know what's going on from your MySQL instances, as well as create errors and use that data straight away. But yes, also there's documentation that can help you to understand what's behind that app. And also how to get more out of your MySQL database data. All right, next question for Shane. How do you handle PI, so personally identifiable data, and can collectors be set up to exclude certain types of data?
The answer on the second part of that question is yes, absolutely. You can exclude certain types of data. The first part is Sumo Logic has several certifications, and Mike, you can talk a lot about this, to where we can actually store PII in their system safely. Everything's transferred. The data that they hold is encrypted on their end, and we also encrypt in transit. We don't send a whole lot of PII data into Sumo Logic, but if you're worried about sending PII into data, that you can absolutely, yes, you can do it, and you can do it and still pass an audit. Because of certain, I talked a little bit about the RBAC system of Sumo Logic, and that's how we kind of pare down to make sure that people that don't need access to data such as that don't have access to data such as that. And then we actually take it a step further in regards to how we allow people to access the Sumo Logic product. We actually don't access it via the front end over the internet. We don't allow that. We only allow access to Sumo Logic via our internal network, and we blacklist the public portal per se, Sumo Logic's public portal, and then we use our own on the back end. Which, if you're concerned about that data set, which we were whenever we came up with it, which is one of the reasons we made that decision. But Sumo Logic has a lot of different ways that you can integrate into their product line. Like, we don't use Sumo Logic authentication at all. We use our own internal LDAP authentication through our own custom-built portal to be able to access the Sumo Logic system. And then we pair that with the RBAC controls that are already in Sumo Logic to filter down who can see what inside of the system.
All right, thank you, Shane. Next question: is there a salt stack formula on the way to manage the collector? And there's a placeholder in GitHub for this, but it's empty. And yes, the answer is yes. We do have a salt stack formula on the way. Another question here. I can bring it up. Is there a way by which we can connect Amazon RDS logs to Sumo Logic? And the answer there is yes as well. And we have a blog post on this also, and also you can look in our documentation. But yes, you can connect to Amazon's relational database service and pull the logs in from Amazon RDS. All right, let me look through the questions here to see if we have any more. All right, well, I think that covers it for today. Shane, thank you so very much for presenting, and Matt as well. Again, invite everyone to, if you're not a Sumo Logic customer already, to check us out. Go to sumologic.com. We have a 30-day free trial. And again, onboarding is a breeze. And Shane, Matt, thank you once again, and we look forward to talking with you all soon.